Coming at you from my vapor room winter garden, I'm Marino the Vape God, and today we're going to chit-chat a little bit about this old setup I've had that I just call the Stealth. Now I named that mostly because the whole body of this mod is the Tesla Stealth. It came out a couple of years ago. I don't remember exactly when, so don't quote me on that. But I picked this dude up pretty cheap. I thought it was really cool because it was one of the first mods that I had seen that where the tank was like recessed super deep into it. And I know there are some older mods that had already had that, but I had not stumbled across it yet. So I thought this was stupid cool. And honestly, I still think it is. It's pretty slick. It's an 80-watt device. It's got 2,000 milliamp hour battery all jammed up inside of here. Strictly USB chargeable. It used to come in like a rubber matte coating, but after a while that started peeling off as these things usually do. So I just kind of like sanded it down to death and all that. So it looks pretty cool now. I dig that. At the time, I paired it up with the Visnjic Theorem, which is a pretty interesting piece, just because it falls so deep down inside of it. I love that. It makes it such a tiny little setup. The entire thing can be held in your hand like that. And I mean, this was before, stealth style vapes, pod systems, Juul, anything that nowadays we consider small and stealthy. This was before any of that had really hit the market. We were still just in like the revolution of rebuilding and sub-ohm vaping and all that stuff. So this guy was a pretty neat piece at the time. And check it out, it put out pretty well. That ain't half bad. So, honestly, the most interesting part about this setup is the Visnjic Theorem was a really, really cool RTA that at its time was kind of coming back during this whole wave of RTAs first, re-hitting the scene. Because years ago, we had very similar devices, like back before I was really into vaping. I was just doing it because I was, legitimately trying to quit smoking. They had these tanks that they called Genesis tanks, or Jenny tanks, that were what we pretty much consider an RDTA now, but they were usually built for a single coil build, and it was always a vertical coil with a wire mesh wick instead of cotton. And like that was a big thing. If you were hardcore, you had a Jenny tank, and they were really obnoxious because you had to tip the mod when you hit it to get that juice onto the mesh wick, because the mesh didn't just naturally wick on its own. It really just kind of inhibited juice flow as it flowed up into your coil. They were weird and honestly really bad. I don't know why people were convincing themselves that they were so cool, but everybody had one, including me. So yeah, this guy was kind of a mark of, in my head, it was a mark of us moving towards a much broader RDTA world, like a much more functional one too. And it's pretty neat. It's hard to see on the camera, as it always is in my videos here, but it runs off of a single coil in here, and then that wicks down inside of it, and it holds about 1.5 mils of juice. It's really not too much. The airflow comes in from the top, which is cool. Even these days, you don't get a lot of top airflow RDTAs. Nowadays, there are a bunch of top airflow RTAs, but never so much with these guys. It was pretty neat, although the construction of it is pretty strange because the entire thing's just held together by its own glass. There's no screws or anything. So they're pretty prone to leaking if you didn't do it right. Fortunately, I managed to do it well enough, but yeah, these things were not the greatest. But a cool thing, it's hard to see here, but they came with a Notch Coil. Visnjic was it Visnjic or Joytech? Visnjic and Joytech both came out with Notch Coils around the same time. Somebody did it first. I don't remember which one, but they were within weeks of each other. They popped these little dudes out. And here, I actually managed to snag some fresh examples of them. Yeah, so that's impossible to see, but pretty much what you're looking at here is it's a stainless steel tube with a bunch of notches cut out in it instead of having like a traditional wrapped coil. And it was pretty cool because these guys ohmed out pretty low, but since it's stainless steel, it didn't require very much power to run. You could also run it in temperature control, and as you can see, they're completely pre-built. Absolutely no crimping. As a matter of fact, crimping these things would just destroy them. You would just plug this puppy in, heat it up, and you're good to go. And so that was one of the things that made the Theorem cool. It was one of the only devices that had it. After a while, they ended up putting Notch coils inside of some AIO coils, like the starter kit Joytech AIO. But they weren't mega popular because it was just too hot for how small the device is. But with this guy, it was absolutely flame. A weird thing, this guy it has like a single airflow ring going on in here, one entry to go through it. But it also came with a dual airflow one, which is pretty ridiculous to me because this was only ever designed to accommodate a single coil. So I thought that was a little dumb. But as a setup, this thing was the bee's knees. I really liked it. And it was cool because at the time it was sporting a whole bunch of features that just weren't everywhere in vape already. And I mean, nowadays they are, but this really brought along, you know, something that was pocket sized and still really hefty and it could put out. It was pretty sweet. What was, you know, did you have a vape that you felt marked a, you know, an explosion into the vape world? Yeah, talk about it. Let me know. Thanks for watching.